The proclamation of the Holy Gospel according to Mark. A leper came to Jesus and kneeling down begged him and said, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, "I do will it, be made clean." The leprosy left him immediately, and he was made clean. Then, warning him sternly, he dismissed him at once. He said to him, "See that you tell no one anything, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them." The man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places, and people kept coming to him from everywhere. The Gospel of the Lord.
Our Gospel for this Sunday comes from St. Mark. It is the healing, the cure, the miraculous curing done by Jesus of a person afflicted with leprosy. And this blends very well with the lesson from the first reading, the book of Leviticus. And we said, while we were reflecting on the first reading, that in the tradition of the Jews, the Judaic faith, leprosy was not just a biological or physical sickness. It was more of an impurity. That's why they went to the priest, who had to determine whether this person was ritually pure or ritually impure. And the person afflicted with the impurity of leprosy must present themselves to the priests and must make sure that they do not contaminate the holy people of God with their impurity. This is affirmed in the Gospel for today. After the miraculous cure of the person with leprosy, Jesus instructs him to go to the priest, to present himself to the priest as a proof that he has been purified. So maybe in the Gospel, just maybe, we should say, rather than healing, it is a miracle of purifying. It is both healing and purifying, but I guess the word purification captures better what Jesus did to the person afflicted with leprosy, seeing this in the wider context of the Jewish faith, where the purity of the people, the purity of the person with leprosy are at stake. Purity. Now, St. Paul tells us in the second reading, imitate Jesus. He is the pure one. And this is the way to be pure also. Imitate Jesus. So let us turn to the Gospel, bearing in mind the lessons from the first two readings about purity. Let us imitate Jesus. And let me point to two important lessons. First, in the Gospel for today, the man afflicted with leprosy pleaded with Jesus, "If you will to do so, you can purify me. You can heal me. You can purify me, if you will to do so." And here is the first lesson for us who desire to be pure like Jesus. Jesus was moved with compassion. He did not say, "Oh, you impure one, follow the teaching of Leviticus. You should not come near me. You should be shouting out, 'Impure, unclean, unclean, depart from me.'" No. Instead of that, instead of a legalistic approach to this person who is obviously suffering, Jesus' heart was moved with compassion. we said that this impurity called leprosy, it is, yes, physically draining and physically painful, but the impurity that makes you an outcast, this should move the heart of everyone. It is not just the fear of being contaminated by the disease, but our hearts are moved with compassion when we see how this person is rendered, dead in terms of the absence of any social contact with people. And the heart of Christ is moved by that prospect. The heart of Christ reaches out to this person. And so he says, I do will it. Be purified. Be purified. My dear brothers and sisters, I know there are still people afflicted with leprosy. What is our reaction to them? Fear? Disdain? Or like Christ, the pure one, are we moved to compassion? And when we look at the different forms of leprosy in our society, corruption, injustice, cheating, discrimination, the trafficking in persons, the battering of women, children, the poor, the hunger that is becoming worse, etc. These forms of leprosy, what is our reaction? Do we become holier than others? Do we become indifferent? Do we become callous as though we are not part of this world? Do we say, they are impure and I want to preserve my life, my family, my sector from being contaminated by their concerns and by the ills and evils afflicting them? Are our hearts hardened? Or our hearts moved like the heart of Jesus when confronted with the impurity plaguing our people? This is the first lesson in imitating Christ, the pure one. The second is this: Jesus went an extra mile. He did not only experience compassion for this man with leprosy, he stretched out his hand to touch this man. This man who is supposed to be telling him, depart from me, don't come near me. But before this man could say, unclean, unclean, Jesus was the one who came close to him. He stretched out his hand and touched the man with leprosy. Now, this is a drama. I try to imagine myself, if I am before a person with leprosy, before I stretch out my hand to touch the person, if I want to imitate Christ, I will admit to you, I will have second thoughts. I'll say, will I imitate Christ? Will I stretch out my hand to touch the wound of this person? What will be paramount in my mind? The fear that by touching this person, his sickness might be passed on to me. But something marvelous happened in the gospel. While the sickness, the impurity could really contaminate Jesus, the reverse happened. The purity of Jesus was stronger than the leprosy. And so when he touched the man, he did not get the sickness, the impurity. The man got Jesus' purity. And he was healed. He became pure. The holiness of Jesus was stronger than the leprosy. So the leprosy stopped. So this person can now mingle with the holy people of God thanks to the strength of Jesus' purity. And now, people, according to the gospel, started flocking to Jesus. They were not afraid of coming close to Jesus, who just touched a person with leprosy. They knew that in Jesus, purity has triumphed. Purity could be stronger than leprosy. My dear brothers and sisters, there are many forms of leprosy in our society. Do not be afraid, but make sure you confront them with the purity of Jesus. Just like the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, where there is hatred, the leprosy of hatred, confront it, touch it with your love, the purity of love. Where there is doubt, the leprosy of doubt, confront it, touch it with the purity of faith. All of these, where there is corruption, touch it with the purity of integrity and honesty. Where there is lack of commitment, touch it with sincerity and genuine service. Let us not be afraid. Let us pass on the purity of Christ. Let us believe in its power to combat and to clean the unclean, and the world will be purer. I had a minor experience, not as dramatic as the gospel. I was giving a talk once, and it was about some ideas that are being proposed by theologians, etc. Not that I necessarily agreed with all of those ideas, but the topic was a survey of recent theological opinions, and some of them I disagreed with. But I had to present. At the end of my presentation, during the open forum, there was one person who said, Bishop, I was disturbed by some of the ideas that you explained to us. He said, I'm really disturbed. I was about to walk out of this room. And then I said, well, I agree with you. Some of them are disturbing. But I asked him, why did you not walk out? He said, but you know, Bishop, you were so sincere in your presentation, and you were also humorous. And so my fear was conquered by that. I told myself, if Bishop could be calm in the face of all these alarming ideas, if he could be calm, then I should be calm myself. See, it was just a smile, it was just sincerity, but you could see how you can silence even hearts that are fearful. Please, brothers and sisters, do it. Like Jesus, touch the many forms of leprosy, impurity in our world, with the purity of Jesus. The word has been exposed. Let us now fulfill it.